Are you vaguely considering a job change? Or perhaps you're actively job searching? No matter your job status, you need an updated and optimized resume. And as you're about to learn, optimizing your resume has changed a lot in the last few years. Get ready to learn all about how AI and specifically the ATS or Applicant Tracking System has significantly changed the rules of effective resume writing. If you choose to ignore the new resume guidelines based on the ATS, there is a high probability that no one will ever read your resume. On the other hand, if you incorporate the ATS guidelines, if you optimize your resume based on the advice that you're about to hear, you just might have a competitive advantage relative to other job seekers whom you're competing against. Are you ready?
Let's do this. Let's talk about talk.
Welcome to Talk About Talk, Update Your Resume and LinkedIn with Martin Buckland. I get a lot of requests from my clients to help them with their resume. Let me say up front that there are things that I can help you with when it comes to your resume. There are also things that I cannot. I can definitely help you craft your narrative in terms of clearly communicating your unique personal brand. I can help you choose the words and the phrases that will reinforce your unique value, your positioning as a job applicant. What I cannot do is help you with formatting. I am not an expert in that. And as I said at the beginning, the ATS or Applicant Tracking System has completely changed how resumes should be formatted. So, what should we do? Let's call in the expert, Mr. Martin Buckland. You're about to hear my conversation with Martin, where we literally go line by line and he describes what can and cannot be included, starting with your name at the top, all the way down to your interests at the bottom of your resume. To make this process easier for you, Martin and I created a one-page template of what should be included in the top section of your resume in particular. You can find a link to this one-pager in the show notes, which you can either print now before you listen to the interview, or you can print and read it later as a review. Martin and I thought that this would be helpful if you could see an example of exactly what he's describing. All right then, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Martin and then we'll get right into the interview. After the interview, as always, I will summarize with 3 main learnings that I want to reinforce for you. Are you ready? Martin Buckland is a globally acclaimed executive career coach and executive resume writer. He's helped thousands of individuals across the world manage their careers, climb the corporate ladder, and land the job they deserve. After a distinguished law enforcement career with the renowned London Metropolitan Police and Scotland Yard, Martin retired and started Elite Resumes. He provides career management services customized to the client's job level, sector, and career goal. Working with eMBA, Executive MBA programs, inspired Martin to launch eMBA Career Coach, designing a platform of tools catering to graduates and candidates around the world. He also works for numerous business schools around the world. Martin is a sought-after presenter, podcast guest, coach, and resume CV writer. He frequently presents to large and small audiences and facilitates intense workshops as an authority in all pillars of career management. He enjoys delivering what he lightheartedly calls the career management gospel according to Martin. He's earned over 20 certifications, including Master Resume Writer, Certified Social Media Career Strategist, Personal Brand Strategist, Job and Career Transition Coach, Employment Interview Professional, and Job Search Trainer. Here we go. Thank you so much, Martin, for being here today to talk to the Talk About Talk listeners about your resume and LinkedIn profile.
You're very welcome, Andrea. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Before we get into this, I just want to say for those folks who are listening to this podcast and not watching on YouTube, you are wearing an absolutely fantastic shirt. I love it.
Well, thank you for your compliments. Yes, I'm known for my shirts and my color that I wear. And friends, when I go out, they ask me, well, wonder what color he's going to wear. I wonder what shirt he's going to wear today. And then when I go online, and I do, as you know, a lot of live streaming, I try and wear a different shirt. Obviously, you run out of shirts, but I try and wear a different shirt because I've been doing 4 podcasts or 4 webcasts today, and each person has asked me about the shirt.
So this is a particularly remarkable shirt. Now people are going to want to go to YouTube to see this, or maybe I'll put a photo of us in the show notes so people can see it.
Oh,
It's
sure.
fantastic.
Thank
So
you.
this is your 4th time on camera today.
Yes. Yes. The first one was at 4 a.m. this morning.
Wow. Okay. And behind you, for those people who aren't watching this on YouTube, you have 9 clocks that are all set for different time zones. So clearly you are coaching and doing workshops all over the world.
That's right. Yeah, I have clients right now in 31 different countries.
Amazing. Okay, so let's get into this then. Before we get into what does the ideal CV or resume look like, I have a perhaps more general question, which is, what's the difference between a CV and a resume, or is there a difference?
Well, that could be a long-winded question, but it really the CV, traditional CV, is known or resume is known as a CV in Europe and certain parts of Asia and Middle East, and then a resume is known here in the Americas and certain other parts of the world. So basically, they are the same documents. However, let's go down to drill it down a little bit further. A traditional CV is reserved here in North America for somebody like a scientist, a physician and surgeon, somebody in the justice system, a judge, or subject matter expert. But and that's called the curriculum vitae. Yeah,
Right. That's right. I know that from being in academia.
that's
It's
right.
a
Yeah.
different sort of document, and that's not necessarily what we're talking about. So I'm
No.
going to try and stick to the right vocabulary here, and I'll be asking you about a resume. But
Sure.
this advice is hopefully relevant for people all over the world with regards to kind of the classic managerial 2-page resume or CV, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Or 3-page.
Okay, well, we'll get into that. We'll get
Yeah.
into that. I love it. I knew there was a little hesitation there. So, what does the ideal resume look like then?
Okay, so there's 3 different types of resumes. So there's the functional, which I used to write when I first started writing resumes or CVs 31 years ago. That's a skills-based resume. And then there is the reverse chronological, which is sort of self-explanatory. And
Yep.
then there's the combination. So a combination of the functional and the reverse chronological. And that's the resume, the CV of choice today. And you cannot afford to go out of that particular format, the combination, because today we've gone into the technology age where candidates, when they apply for jobs, aren't screened by human eyes initially. They are screened now. Sadly, I don't like it, and many other people don't like it, but we have to abide by technology, and it's built around a certain format and a certain content. And as you know, Andrea, you cannot beat a computer, but you can at least try and match it.
Right. It's like understanding the algorithm of LinkedIn, which we're going to get to in a
Sure.
moment here. But so understanding what it's looking for. I was going to ask you about the do's and don'ts in terms of making it through the AI screen in a minute. But let's go back to, you talked about a functional versus a chronological CV. So I had heard that, I guess, humans, when they're reading a resume, prefer chronological because it gives a structure that our brain can understand. It tells a story, a chronological story. And sometimes people would even in their minds question whether, if someone created a functional resume, if they were trying to, hide something or create some confusion because maybe they took a big break and they were trying to hide it. So can you elaborate a little bit on why you're recommending or hearing that people are preferring the combination and what specifically that might look like?
Well, a combination really above the crucial part of a resume CV today is what I call above the fold on the first page. So that's the top third of a page. That is your sales proposition.
Yes.
And so you have to get it correct, and it has to you have to get cross the T's and dot the I's in the right sections. That translates it, takes it from a traditional reverse chronological, which is a no-no today because it won't go through the ATS, and it takes it away from the skills-based resume. But you're right. Yes, we used to it used to be when somebody was received a functional, a skills-based resume many years ago, it used to put a lot of, well, question marks in people's mind. Why is this person reverted to a functional rather than a chronological? But now all resumes, CVs are combination of the two.
So you mentioned ATS. What is ATS?
So it's called Application Tracking System. It's the acronym for Application Tracking System. So your resume, your CV, if you were to submit to a corporate job or an NGO job or even the government, municipal, federal, local, or whatever, it's sadly fed into. It's not read by human eyes. It's fed into a computer and pulled out based on a certain format and a certain content.
Right.
You have to get that content right. So, in other words, one character wrong, one line wrong, one bullet wrong, even, and you're gone. It's that sensitive. So, I've had many clients who've just had one minor mistake, and they've been in job search and they're close to running out of money and they're panicking, they're frustrated. And their social or their family life is falling apart because of this situation. It's just 5 minute change, and then they get interviews.
Wow. Okay, so bring it on. What are some of these things that we need to be aware of?
Well, shading. You can't have shading. I mean, that's a pretty simple thing. People have a lot of shades in their resume. Each block of shade creates an extra page. So, if you've got 3 different types of shades and you've got a traditional 3-page resume, that means it's going to go to 6 pages. And then this is the crucial thing. They have their name and they have all their contact info. And maybe down the left-hand side, they have their skills. Well, the text within that shade cannot be read by the scanning machinery. So nobody will know what their name is, let alone their email and how to contact them and everything else.
Because of the shading or because it's in a box to the side?
Because of the shading. So the text. So 2 things. You can't have the shading, and that every block of shade creates an extra page, and then the text within that shading. Then you can't read. The scanning machinery doesn't read, so 0 comes out. So they won't even know your name.
Yeah, this is critical. So
yeah.
So people, black on white, right? Black copy on white paper, no shading, no color. Let's just
have a little bit of color. You can have maybe a color border, but you can't have shading. You can't have underlines. You can have hyperlinks, but you can't have underlines. Limited bolding, and we'll come to bolding in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
You can only have 1 block of text of 4 lines or more, and the rest has to be 3 lines. You can only have squares or small circles as bullets. So, some people have those graphics and whatever. Every graphic. So some people put the little, I don't know what it's called. Well, the receiver for their telephone number, and their, little envelope for their email. Well, every one of those graphics again creates an extra page.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
So it's very, very particular, and it's sad that many people who are a perfect candidate, but they've got 150% of the skills needed or required, and they'd be a perfect candidate, they'd be a perfect employee, but they're counted out just simply because technology.
And you shared with me in a recent conversation that you and I had a tip about credentials being on a separate.
Yeah. In the when I used to first started writing resumes prior to ATS, I used to put the credentials around after the name, the
Right.
MBA, BSc, or whatever. Now, if you put that, the scanning machinery will think your name is MBA, BSc, and it will forget about your name. So you now have to put the credentials, designations, or whatever right underneath your name.
On a second line. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's also critical, in particular for some positions, right, where a certain
Oh, sure.
designation or credential is required.
So I'm
Woo!
just really touching it. There's a whole long laundry list of stuff you can't do. Yeah, I mean, I could keep you here to breakfast tomorrow morning because it's like it's really long list. I've had to adjust my resume writing style to meet this format.
Yeah. Well, you can think of it as a competitive advantage. If you're taking the time to listen to this podcast and to take these instructions from Martin, then you may have an advantage that a lot of people are lacking. I'm going to ask you now if you can just kind of go through from the top. You talked about what's above the fold. I love that. And then the sections and maybe the do's and don'ts. And then we'll move on to LinkedIn.
Sure, yeah. So you obviously have your name at the top, and then you have your designations, and then underneath that you have your contact info. Now you don't need to put your full address, which is good, like we used to. Your full
Yeah.
residential address. You can just put the city and the province or the state or county or whatever it is. But you must have these four key things. You must have your phone number. You must have your email and keep it a professional email. Hotmail is like a cardinal sin. You can't have Hotmail. That's like a very unprofessional. And then you need to have your LinkedIn address
Yep.
customized, and we're going to talk about that when we come to LinkedIn. And just recently, I'm going to say in the last 6 or 8 weeks, you now need to have your 10-digit Zoom address on your resume. So
Oh,
those are the contact points. Then you have a line separating that. And then underneath that, you have the directive. Now, this is the only forward or future part of the resume, because the resume basically documents your career history. It's a historical document. So it takes you from today backwards. But
right.
a cover letter written in the personal pronoun takes you from today forwards. So those two go hand in hand. So you need to have the type. If you're going to send to an executive recruiter, you would put a senior supply chain leader or something, or senior finance leader or whatever. But and then if you want to get on their database, but if they have a specific job you are applying for, you put chief financial officer or senior manager FP&A or whatever it is.
Got it.
And then you need to, for a corporate job, when you're applying, you need to put the full title of that job. Underneath that, you need to look through the job notice. This gives you extra points with the ATS. So underneath the job title, you put the 4 top hard skills that you think you in your own mind that they are looking for in that advert. And
Okay,
that's
so I've got two questions.
yeah, sure.
First of all, why four? And secondly, hard skills, do you mean specifically as opposed to soft skills?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So hard skills are your business skills. So they are your functional skill
Okay,
level, industry, and sometimes geographic skills.
got it.
Whereas your soft skills are your personal skills, the skills you were born with and brought up on. So that you need to distinguish between the two, and then we're going to have a section on that in a couple of minutes. So you do the top. Why top 4 is because it has to be on one line. Because if you go to, this is another ATS thing. If it goes to 2 lines, you throw the ATS off. So if there is room for 5, you can have 5. But don't go more than 1 line. So what I do is I do supply chain management, space, bullet, space, asset management, space, bullet, space, demand planning, space, bullet, space, and whatever the 4th one is. And
Got
then
it.
underneath that, you have your personal brand. So that is your, as you know, is your unique promise of value, your differentiator, your value add. And that has to be written in 15 17, or 19 words. Don't go to 18, don't go to 16, don't go to 20. Why? It's because psychologists tell us that the human mind, our mind, picks up on 15, 17, or 19 words faster than any other combination.
I have never heard that before.
Yeah, and so that goes in bold italics on 2 lines underneath those 4 hard skills.
Okay.
You have a space, and then you go into a 4 to 6 line margin to margin block paragraph. And there's 4 key ingredients you need to have in here. These are what I would call the sweaty palm, twiddling your thumbs, shuffling your butt questions you're going to be asked in the interview. So you may as well put the answers to them in the resume. It makes your life a lot easier, plus it makes the interviewer's life a lot easier. So one of the questions is, what one word would describe you? Now, I'm not interested in a wussy word like passionate, driven, or successful. Of course you are. I'm interested in an unusual word, but a word that you'd be prepared to defend. So don't just go to the dictionary and think, "Oh, that looks like a good word. I'm going to put that in my resume." It doesn't work that way, because you're going to be questioned, well, why did you choose that word? So, audacious, tenacious, sagacious, resilient, pioneer, intrepid, robust, unstoppable, unflappable. Start that paragraph off with that one word, and then you need to describe your leadership style, because as you know, we all lead differently. And then you need to describe your communication style, because we all communicate differently. And then the final thing is, what are you renowned for business-wise, not to be duplicated from your personal brand. Your personal brand's over here, and what you're renowned for business-wise is over here. So don't duplicate the two. So 4 key things in that 4 to 6 line block paragraph. And then you go into your business, functional, skill, level, industry, maybe geographic skills. So you're allowed a maximum of 28. So
28, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. But sometimes there is a maximum of 4 lines. So you might only go to 24 or even 20. But 28 is the max. Don't go any more than 28. Whereas on a LinkedIn, you can go to 100. But we'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of minutes. But so you do it. So executive leadership, space, pipe, the downward line, space, and then whatever the second one is, space, pipe, space, and then whatever the third one is, space, pipe, space. But look at the advert. There again, take those top 4 again and repeat them. And then take all the other hard skills and put them down there, and then you can and then put the other hard skills that you think that you have. Don't put hard skills that you haven't got, because that's lying. Embellishing, and that's not called for. But get about 20, 26, 28. If you can get 28 in, that would be good. And then, so now you're a third of the way down the first page. If that's the top of above the fold, now you go into reverse chronological of your work experience.
Okay, so
when you go into a job search, people don't know how. They're salespeople. They're nothing to do with finance or supply chain or marketing or whatever. They are selling themselves. The 3 worst functions for resume writing are sales, marketing, and human resources.
why is that?
You would think they would be the best. Well, they can sell anything, but they can't sell themselves.
Yeah.
And and never repeat an action verb. So when we come into the professional experience, start repeat an action verb between page 1 and page 2. You can repeat it between page 1 and page 3.
Okay.
So I see on a sales resume, increased. Well, how boring is that? What about propelled? What about catapulted? What about elevated, raised, boosted, uplifted? There's so many other action verbs. It excites the audience at the other end as well. And it also shows you have a good command of English.
So the algorithm doesn't care that you have synonyms and a great vocabulary, right? But the algorithm is looking for things. So you've switched now from at the top third, the above the fold. It was what you were describing to me violates so many tenets of
I know.
effective communication, interpersonal communication, and written communication. For
Yeah,
example, people's eyes glaze over after a paragraph that runs more than 3 lines. They'll
right.
either skip it or they'll skim it. Neither one of those is good news for you. So I always tell people keep it below 3 lines. And if you're making a list, I would say at most it's a 3 by 3, right? You have 3 columns and 3 rows, and you're saying 28. Wow. So the top part is really written for the algorithm, for the
Exactly.
ATS.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, people, recruiters and other HR professionals, people who read and assess resumes all the time now have become used to this format. But you still get that first, the 6 second, 5 second, 4 second, or whatever it is, initial cut. If they can tell instantly if it's not a good resume. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
rule of thumb to write a resume, an hour and a half for every year of your career.
Mm. Okay. Wow.
So
But you,
people, write it with I give them a free, no obligation resume critique, and then 6 hours later they send it back to me based on what I've told them, and I know instantly it's going to be,
garbage.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
One kick of the can. You need to invest time, and then if you know can't or make an investment in somebody who's professional to do it. There's lots of us around.
So, what are the main sections after this top of the fold summary section? You said professional experience, and what other?
So yeah, so the professional experience based on accomplishments. So when I first started writing resumes, we used to put responsibilities.
Right.
They're not really interested in your responsibilities now. They're
Right.
interested in, well, how much money can he make me? How much money can he save me? Can he eliminate headcount? Can he introduce new systems and processes? Can he save us from CRA, or can he save us from, total destruction, and all sorts of different things. So
Yeah.
so and there's the emphasis. So people sell their companies by using bolding and maybe capitals more than they're selling their title, their job title. Well, this is
Mm,
not their company's resume. This is their resume.
mm,
The wrong emphasis is on, and then underneath the title, which is in bold capitals, there are some responsibilities that the ATS and the reader, the human eye, needs to see at the other end. They need to see direct reports, indirect reports, your CapEx budget, your OpEx budget, and if you have it, your P&L. Now, if
yep.
it's international job, they need to see, well, how many countries have you got staff in and things like that, or
Yeah.
how many branches are you responsible for, or whatever. And that would be in small letters. And then this is this is what people have difficulty in, and it just blows my mind. They can't sell themselves. So you build the acronym, their sales stories around. I don't call myself a resume writer anymore. I call myself a storyteller. So I tell stories on behalf of my clients based on their performance. Because if you were to go on a job search, you're not going to be hired for your responsibilities. You're going to be hired for your results, your accomplishments, your achievements,
Yes.
your
Yes.
performance. So
Yes.
you need to tell stories based on the acronym STAR. So situation, task, action, result. Now
Mm,
this is where the ATS comes into again. Some of the STAR stories I write for people, like resurrecting a company, like they were in deep trouble. They got bank debt, they got all sorts of different stuff, tax authorities after them, and all that jazz. They've resurrected that company. There's a good word for you, resurrected. So you revive it, and so that would go, maybe, if I was to write it, maybe 10 lines, somewhere like that. But scanning machinery, the ATS, only allows you one block of text of 4 lines or more. Everything else has to be 3 lines. So
okay.
what you can do is you can cheat. You can do the situation as one bullet, either a
Right.
square or circle bullet, and then you can sub bullet the task, the action, and the result So three lots, three lots of three, which is and then the total 12 lines. I've never gone to a 12 line, but I've come close to about 10, maybe
Yeah.
11, but yeah.
So you can split up the star framework into different points as necessary. So you're not going over. It's 3 lines. You're not allowed to go
Yeah,
over.
not allowed to go even one character over. 3 lines and
Right.
one character, that blows
You're
you out.
done.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So
So
for example,
I've coached some folks who are on the job market on using the STAR method and using it for answering questions in job interviews. And
right.
it's become so popular and common that I've told them sometimes the interviewer will recognize that you're using the STAR method, but don't worry about it because that just means that you're preparing yourself and you're taking this seriously. And
Oh,
here we
sure.
are talking about it now showing up in our resume. I love it.
Sure. So it makes the resumes today, it makes the interviewer's life at the other end a lot easier because
Mhm.
they've got the questions there almost, yeah, to
Right.
ask. It's
Right.
really a run through of your resume.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I guess you're begging for the question then. Other than the stories that you shared in your resume, do you have any other stories that you can share where you solved a problem, made money, saved money, whatever it is, right? So
yeah.
you can kind of anticipate
Performance
that that's
after
good.
performance after performance, stack it out at this end rather than the earlier end of the career. I normally cut it off about 13 or 14 years and
Yeah.
then really scale it back
Yeah.
unless you save the world or something, in which case that's a
Yeah.
star story. Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
tell the story. But
So I have heard that the most recent titles or positions that you had, you share more detail and then less as it goes back in time.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But 1.5 star stories per year, that's the measure. So people say to me, "Oh, I haven't got a 1.5. I haven't got any accomplishments." Well, I say, "Well, sit with me because I'm an ex-police officer as well. So I'm a detective, and literally pull stuff out of them, and they like, whoa, wow, like that's flipping amazing, yeah, yeah." And so they're so happy, they're so overjoyed, but everybody on this planet has good star stories, but it's just a question of getting into the right mindset of sitting
Mm,
down and thinking about them.
This is another reason, I guess, is a bit of a side here for us to update our resumes, even when we're not on the job market. Maybe every year after you're done your performance review, you take your accomplishments, turn them into star stories on your resume, and then it's so much easier when the time comes, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I put it on LinkedIn all the time. You should update your resume every 3 or 4 or 5 months, and they don't believe it. And then, of course, they say I've got a job offer and I need my resume by tomorrow, but I've been watching your LinkedIn profile, your posts and whatever. Well, it doesn't happen that way. It takes, working with me can take up to a month. But
Yeah.
yeah, and they're so frustrated. Yeah, but they'll always have your resume prepared because tomorrow, Friday, or next Monday, next Tuesday, an executive recruiter could call you with your dream job, the job of your dreams,
Right.
and you don't know how you haven't got an up-to-date resume. Yeah.
Right. So, what proportion of the space of your CV, whether it's 2 or 3 pages, as you were saying, should your professional experience take up? And then what are the sections after that?
The rule of thumb is either do 2 complete pages or 3 complete pages. You don't do 2.5, 2 1/3, or 2 1/4, or whatever, because psychologically, what does that send to the reader at the other end?
Right.
So then the education comes in.
Okay.
So here again, people sell their universities, and then they just they totally ignore their degree or their diploma or certification or
Ah,
designation. You highlight the designation, yeah. And if you've got a thesis or you've got something you've done like a capstone project or
yeah.
something, you put
Or a
that in.
scholarship, maybe a scholarship or an academic award or
Scholarship, yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or if you've been on an EMBA program and you've done international modules, so you've done a module in London, Paris, and New York, and maybe San Francisco or Dubai, you put that in there because that shows the reader that you've got international background as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got education, and also that should be reverse chronology as well, right? With
Reverse chronological, yeah. And
okay.
then then you can go into things like memberships and affiliations, licenses and certifications. Then you can go into patents, publications, presentations. I normally, if a lot of people have got, lots of presentations and lots of publications, I cheat. I go to an addendum. So I had create a fourth page, which you do, but you ask the reader at the other end if they would like the addendum. Yeah.
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So I was having this conversation with my son who's graduating from college, and he was asking for help with his resume, and he had it at about 1.5 pages. And I said, it should really be 2 pages. And he said, no, Mom, we've actually been told 1 page. So I'm curious what you think. So he's going out on the job. By the way, he successfully secured the job of his dreams.
Yeah, 1 page for him, graduating, unless he's got extensive work experience prior to going to school or whatever. That's perfect. But sadly, as you know, I specialize at the EMBA level. So the career services at lots of business schools, they don't, they're vastly out of date. And
Yes.
I've got a cat walking in front of me. You can see that?
I just saw a white tail go by.
That shows I work from home.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So yeah, so 1 page is like, no, you can't create an ATS friendly resume on 1 page. But services are giving, people spend 200,000 USD to go through those programs, and then the career services say do 1 page. That's like a cardinal sin.
Wow. Okay.
So that's why I uncover this niche.
Yeah. What about at the bottom of our resume where we have, interests and hobbies and you have, like I led the Toastmasters group of Toronto for 3 years from this, whatever. You have the things that you've done in the community, maybe with your church or your hobbies, the clubs, etc., and personal interests. What are some do's and don'ts there?
Anything political, anything religious. Sadly, we're still in a discriminatory age. Unless you're applying to a political party, unless you're applying to a faith-based organization, then put it in. But leave that out because we can still discriminate against you. But and if you've got some community Red Cross or you've got Princess Margaret or something, or something in the community, and you've raised money, then put that in. There are exceptions to that rule. I mean, I've had one client who's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Everest, Mont Blanc, the 5 top mountains in the world. Well, what does that tell the reader at the other end? There's a lot of persistence. Yeah,
right.
Maybe.
You're reminding me of a conversation I had with a client a couple years ago, and I was coaching him on his personal brand. And about 3 sessions in, it was our 3rd coaching session, he said, "Sorry, I look like such a mess. I just came in from a run." And I said, "Oh, this hasn't come up in our conversation yet. You're a runner." He said, "Oh yeah, I've run several marathons. In fact, I'm training for the," and I was like, "How did this not come up?" He said, "I don't think it's relevant." I said, exactly what you just said. It's very relevant. First of all, it's interesting. Secondly, it shows that you have discipline. And it shows that you have perseverance, especially because it is an endurance marathon, right? And
sure.
So we ended up putting on his LinkedIn profile, on the headline, we added avid runner, and his banner image is a picture of him at the starting line of some marathon that he ran, I think in Africa or somewhere.
And, right, yeah, those crazy ones across the desert. Yeah, they go for days. Oh my gosh, yeah.
So,
but that tells an employer how there's tons of hard skill, many soft skills that go into that. Yeah.
So, I remember, again, this was when I was much earlier in my career. It wouldn't show up in my resume now, but when I was a 20-year-old, when I was 18, I skated in the closing ceremonies of the Olympics in Calgary in 1980, and I carried the Canadian flag into the stadium. Okay. Sure. This was so I had, under interests and hobbies, I said ex-competitive figure skater, carried the Canadian flag, la la la. Inevitably, every interview I had in the first 10 years of my career, they would say, "Okay, we want to get into this, Andrea, but first of all, tell us your experience about the Olympics," right? So what I'm hearing from you though, Martin, is you don't want to list every interest and hobby that you have. Ask yourself whether the way that you spend your time outside of work is telling a story that is going to support your, the narrative around why they should hire you, especially in terms of maybe your soft skills,
Sure. Yeah.
and to stay away from political and religious.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So in industry association, so if you've been nominated by your peers to become or go on the executive team of your local chapter or the national association, then that's valuable as well. Yeah.
Right. Right. As of course, and we didn't talk about this, but what about volunteer positions specifically and board work?
Sure.
That would be a separate section, right?
Yes, yes, yes. So a board director resume. So if you're the latter end of your career, I would encourage you as a career coach. You've got management, leadership abilities, significant. I would encourage you maybe to go for a board position. Now, a board resume is a totally different document to a corporate resume. It focuses on risk management, audit, any type of audit, and governance.
Governance, right? Yeah. That's right. Okay.
But different format. So that's another podcast.
Okay, that's another episode.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add about resumes or CVs in terms of whether it's the human reading it or the algorithm, the software reading it? Any do's and don'ts that we've missed?
It's your marketing sales collateral. So I tell people, I break it down to the basics. You are a product and you're sending that product to the market, whatever market that may be. So the package for that product is your resume on one side, your CV, and then your LinkedIn profile on the other side. So don't mess around with either or. You've got to have them as close to perfect as possible. But there is no such thing. I'll admit there is no such thing as a perfect resume or CV, but you can get pretty damn close.
Yeah, I talk about updating is one thing and then optimizing is another. Okay, so let's assume that people have their we'll move on to LinkedIn profile now. What are the most important elements in terms of, where you can optimize your profile on LinkedIn?
Okay, so the number one is you should have a professional picture of yourself. Not hugging your spouse or with your latest fishing catch wiggling in the window, whatever.
Oh, I got one for you. The seatbelt. You can see the seatbelt beside the person's head because they looked at themselves. They were at a red light and they looked at themselves in the mirror. They're like, "Oh, I look pretty good." And they took a selfie and then they uploaded it to LinkedIn.
I know, some crazy ones. Well, what's the future employer going to think about that? You haven't had the time, and you don't need to go to a professional photographer today. You can get your spouse or kids even to take a picture of you.
Yeah.
So have your professional picture. If you don't have a professional picture, A, that raises doubt, and B, you miss out just by simply putting your picture in that circle there. Google, in its algorithm visits to your LinkedIn profile, will give you for free, will give you a 1400% uplift in algorithm visits to your LinkedIn profile for free. It takes you 2 minutes. Then behind that, you need to have a picture, something related, rather than that terrible grayscale LinkedIn, the 3 shades of gray, as I call it. Terrible. It's boring. You need that, so you can go to Canva, canva.com for free, and you can download it. You can get a template, and you can put one of their thousands of pictures in there. Something's relating to your career.
Right.
And beneath that, then you need to have your 220 word or 220 character, headline.
Yes.
This is your sales pitch. This is the first thing that human eyes see. 220, don't just do 20 or 80. Fill those 220 up, and then so really give a lot of thought to drafting and presenting this 220 character headline. And then you have your the contact info. So you need to customize your LinkedIn URL. So when you join LinkedIn, they give you a default address, and you have numbers and letters after your name, or letters or numbers.
Yes.
So now you need to go and take those letters and numbers out after your name for two reasons. A, it's far more professional,
Yes.
and you put that new one on your LinkedIn profile. And B, here again, Google can be your best friend. It gives you another 400% uplift. So having a picture in the circle and having your customized LinkedIn address, Google for free will give you an 1800% uplift in algorithms, traffic to your website. So yeah, so then you need to start filling in all the sections. So the more text you put on LinkedIn, the more Google will like you. You've got to bend to Google. Google is your boss. So as I say, so the more text you put in, so you need to have you need to be active on LinkedIn. Well, you need to have the about section. The about section is heavily weighted on Google. You're allowed
Yeah.
2,600
Yeah.
characters.
I know within the last, I was going to say a couple of months, it's within the last year, LinkedIn moved the about section from farther down in our profiles. They moved it right up. And I
Yeah.
was like, aha, ding, ding, ding. They're
So
telling us how important that section is, right?
very, very important. So,
Yeah.
you're allowed 2,600 characters, but the magic number, apparently in my community, because I hold some certifications in LinkedIn,
Yeah.
my community is about 1,900. So don't go to 2,600. Keep it to about 1,900.
Okay.
Next section down is activity. You need to be, even when you're in gainfully employed,
Yep.
having fun at work and whatever, LinkedIn is still your advertising platform. So you need to be active on LinkedIn. Don't just drop off LinkedIn. I'll give you a good story here. Now, this is not just one, there's several clients. So I tell them, that when we have the wrap up call and they've got maybe got a job,
Yeah.
I say, keep on LinkedIn. I want to see you on LinkedIn, even while you're gainfully employed. So, I don't see them for about 5 years. And then suddenly they're active on LinkedIn. So what I
Yeah.
do, I look their file up and I look their telephone number up and I pick the phone up and say, oh, hello, Mike. I hear you've been downsized or terminated or whatever. And they say, well, how do you know? And I say, well, I haven't seen you on LinkedIn for 5 years. Don't you remember that conversation we Yeah. And oh, yeah, it's a sudden wake up call. Well, Google doesn't like that. Recruiters don't like that. And any other career decision maker don't just like you dropping off. This is your tool. So
Right.
you don't need to be as
Yeah.
vociferous on
Yeah.
LinkedIn as you are when you're in career transition.
Yeah.
You're never
Yeah.
unemployed, you're in career transition. That's what
Yeah.
I call it.
I want to underscore what you're saying here. And I want to take a step back. You and I have a mutual friend who's an executive recruiter, Sharon Majin, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
she told me a couple years ago, she said, Andrea, 5 or 10 years ago, if I was placing someone into a position and I had a contender, an applicant who I thought very highly of, and their LinkedIn profile was not complete and not optimized, right? So they had the grayscale banner image. They didn't have
Yeah.
their headline filled in. Their about section was abysmal, whatever. She said, I would more often than not, depending on their background and the conversation that we had, I would give them the benefit of the doubt. I'd say, well, he or she must be very busy. And she said, that doesn't hold anymore.
No.
LinkedIn is not just a job searching platform. It is a legitimate professional network, period, right? Like
Branding.
we have our in-person network and then we
Yeah.
have our online network. Hopefully they are overlapping to some extent, but actually they're often not, and it's an incredibly valuable tool to you. So even if you're not into posting all the time, you absolutely need to have it updated and optimized. And then she said, furthermore, people take, they say, oh, I don't want to be on, I don't like social media. I don't want to be posting. She goes, do you share articles do you email people articles when you see articles that are interesting? Of course you do. Do you
Sure.
connect people in your network with each other? Of course you do. So why don't you do it on LinkedIn? Why
Yeah.
don't
No.
you, right?
Yeah.
Introduce people in the direct messages, or when you find an article in Inc. magazine or HBR or Forbes or Fast Company that you really like, post it, and ideally post it with your comments. Post it with a love this article, recommend it for people that are interested in blah blah blah. I would add one more point, or I especially loved point number two. It's not, you don't have to write a big article every time,
No.
right?
Or or get a call to action. Well, this is a great article on so and so. What are your thoughts?
Right.
And you're trying to get conversation, trying to get dialogue. And yeah, I mean, the three pillars of activity are create your own content,
Hmm.
share content like off HBR or at Forbes or anything, and then comment on content. So, and then I tell my clients who are in career transition, make Monday, Wednesday, and Friday one of those. Do one of those each week. So create, comment, or share. And
Yeah.
it gives you authority as well. It gives you that thought leadership, that subject matter expert.
Yeah.
You do it, I do it. And when people are thinking about personal branding or whether they're thinking about resume writing or executive coaching, we get calls because
Yeah.
they see us on LinkedIn.
Right. That's right. You want to be top of mind.
Every full-time job is a temporary job in my mind because
Yeah.
the day you could be terminated at any time. Sharon will tell you, I'll tell you, every Monday and Tuesday in the Greater Toronto area alone, about 1,600 to 1,750 people are laid off every Monday and Tuesday. So you could be one of those 1,600, 1,700, 1,800 people terminated. Oh, I didn't know it was coming. It's such a shock to me.
Yeah.
Your LinkedIn isn't up to date. Your resume is about 10 years out of date. You're stranded.
Yes, that's right. All right. Any last points you want to make about the LinkedIn, optimizing and updating our LinkedIn profile before we move on to the rapid fire questions?
I would say you need to have recommendations because when we hire people, we look for red flags or the red light or traffic light, and one of the red flags or the red traffic light is you don't have recommendations. Or your last recommendation was in 2012, 2010. Well, so what's that going to tell me?
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to recommend you since 2012. So
Yikes.
I would suggest that you when you leave a company or you just keep on if your boss retires, ask him or her to give
Mhm.
or they move on to another company, ask him or her to update your LinkedIn profile, give you
I love that. So there's a couple catalysts that you can use. I know some people they're not getting recommendations, not because they're not good folks and they're not doing good work, but maybe they're a little embarrassed about asking or hesitant to ask folks for the recommendation. So I love this idea. When you leave, when you know get your annual feedback and someone's raving about you, you could say, do you mind writing a testimonial or a review or whatever about me? The other thing that I've done is when my clients are like, Andrea, thank you so much. This has really been transformational. That's when I say, do you mind writing me a recommendation or can I use a testimonial on my
yeah.
website or on LinkedIn or wherever it is?
Could be external from the company as well. If you're in the corporate life,
That's
they
right.
could be vendors slash suppliers, or they could be clients slash customers as well.
That's right.
Or if
That's
you
right.
just graduated out of an EMBA program, one of your professors and a couple of your cohorts.
That's a great idea. That's a really good a professor or a teacher or an instructor. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing
But
you could do
never
is,
stop your career management. You are in charge of your career, not your employer. They can you're just a number on their general ledger. And when they hit times where cash flow may be bad
yeah,
or they're changing direction or something else, it's often not against you.
right.
It because of circumstances maybe beyond their control or definitely beyond your control that they decide to let you go and you're just left out stranded.
Right.
Always get a LinkedIn profile recommendation written that your company will give one or two to you when you're terminated in your when you go into a company in your job offer.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
You have
Absolutely.
to be prepared for being terminated when you go into a job.
Yeah.
It's crazy world.
Well, I've heard that, I think you may have even shared this with me, Martin, that your first day on the job is the first day you start looking for your next job. Did you tell me that?
Exactly. That's my motto. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Congratulations on your new job. Start looking for your new job. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Are you ready for the 3 rapid fire questions?
I'm ready.
Okay, first question. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Well, I think I'm quite an extrovert. In fact, I go off the railings.
I have to tell you, fewer and fewer of the folks that I'm interviewing are saying that. Most of the people are saying that they're introverts, but you, me, and Sharon, the 3 of us are off the charts extroverts.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, very
Interesting.
interesting.
Question number 2. What are your communication pet peeves?
Well, number one, and it's pretty paramount, most recently in the global, is lying.
Uh,
Yeah, not being honest with people, and not being open and open and frank. There's nothing wrong in being open and frank and being courteous. Courtesy costs nothing.
Courtesy costs nothing. I love that. Okay. Question number 3. Is there a podcast or a book that you find yourself recommending lately?
Yeah, now I've cheated on this. I got 3. Okay,
Okay.
so and I think you would be interested in all these 3 podcasts. So, the world of work by Dr. Nima Pasha out of the UK from Henley Business School.
Okay.
And that she has some fascinating. I've met her a couple of times,
Yeah.
and she has some fascinating guests. And then the application from the Associate Dean of the Saeed Business School, which is the University of Oxford.
Right.
And one of the EMBA programs that I'm really connected with, the Trium program, which is from the London School of Economics, HSE in Paris, and NYU Stern in New York. That's Trium Connects. So
Okay.
those 3 I listen to constantly. In fact, I get so excited by them because they really are good podcasts. Yeah.
Excellent. I am going to put links to all 3 of those podcasts in the show notes. And before I let you go, I'm going to ask, do you have any advice for folks who are, in career transition and they're trying to show their best face in terms of their resume and in terms of their LinkedIn profile and everything else that they need to do in terms of interviewing? Any general advice for these folks?
Well, yeah, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but I mean, people just go into career transition and they sit on the couch. Well, you're not going to get a job sitting on the couch. You need to be proactive, so you need to use LinkedIn as an online platform, but you need to get out, going to in-person meetings like Meetup.com, and here where we are in Toronto, Meetup.com have different meetings for all sorts of different things. Some of them are weird, but yeah,
Okay.
some of them are okay. You need to network with you in your industry. Networking. Building your network while you're gainfully employed, not just when you're in career transition, and managing your career when you're gainfully employed, not when you're in career transition.
That's wonderful advice. And then your resume and your LinkedIn profile are like the tools that you're using to reinforce and communicate your expertise and your abilities and your track record. I love it. Thank you so much, Martin, for sharing all of your incredibly valuable general and specific advice, the detailed advice on our updating our resume and our LinkedIn profile and generally for job seekers. Thank you so much.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Hopefully, people have got some good information that now they can launch a job search and they have an ATS resume and they have a fully functional LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, there's a lot to keep up to date on. So thank you for helping us with that.
Oh, thank you for having me on your podcast.
Wow, the world really has changed, hasn't it? I mean, we keep reading and hearing about how AI has changed the world of work. I guess that includes job searching and resume writing. Thank you again, Martin, for sharing your valuable expertise with us. Before I share 3 key learnings with you, I want to encourage you to think about the opportunity that you have here. Whether you're vaguely considering a career change or perhaps you're going hard on the job market, having a complete understanding of the best practices for your CV or your resume and your LinkedIn profile can be a competitive advantage for you. Think about the significant proportion of resumes that are rejected outright because they don't comply with ATS standards, the applicant tracking system. Now that you're aware of the ATS and its constraints, again, you have an advantage. Now, as always, I'm going to share with you 3 key learnings that I hope to reinforce coming out of my conversation. The first point is how to think about optimizing your resume. The second point is more tactical. It's a list of specific do-nots, as in what to not do, what to avoid. And the third is a gift from Martin and me that will help make your resume conform to ATS standards. So first, how to think about optimizing your resume. I want you to imagine 5 years ago. 5 years ago, you find a job that you're interested in applying for. What do? You would merge your updated and complete resume with the job posting. Knowing that some people would only send their generic resume, you would believe, probably correctly, that customizing your resume to conform to the specific job posting, including the vocabulary that they use and the skills that they're looking for, will give you an advantage. That was the gold standard just a few years ago. Today, when you apply for a job, you need to cover off 4 things when it comes to your resume. Do you know what they are? Well, the first 2 are the things that I just mentioned. You start with an updated and complete resume. Then, step 2, you customize with the words, the phrases, the skills identified in the job posting. Use the words that the employer is using to describe your skills. There are 2 more things that you need to merge in. Do you know what they are? Based on the conversation with Martin that you just heard, you can probably guess that you need to optimize your resume based on the ATS applicant tracking system. You need to make sure that your resume makes it through the first cut, that your resume is not rejected based simply on its formatting. That would be such a shame. More on that in a minute. So ATS compliance is the third thing that you need to make sure you cover in terms of your resume. The fourth and last element that you need to include is your personal brand. If you've been listening to the Talk About Talk podcast for a while, you probably know exactly what I mean when I say personal brand. You need to clearly identify the unique skills, expertise, experiences, and passions that distinguish you relative to other people in the same industry or the people that are applying for the same job. The key word here is unique. What is that unique thing that you want the person, the human who's reading your resume, to know about you? So there are now 4 things to cover off when preparing your resume. 1, it needs to be updated and complete. 2, it needs to be customized for the specific job you're applying for. 3, it needs to conform to ATS standards. And 4, it needs to communicate your unique personal brand. Ensuring that you nail these 4 things will give you a competitive advantage. So that is the first learning that I want to reinforce based on my conversation with Martin. The second thing I want to reinforce is a list of do-nots. Sure, I could list a bunch of things that you should do, but instead, I'm going to focus on the do-nots. These are the things that I want you to avoid. Sometimes this type of list can be even more helpful, especially when you're hoping to not get booted out by the ATS. So here's the do-nots. First, do not put your credentials like BEng, Bachelor of Engineering, or MBA, or CPA, or whatever, on the same line as your name. If your credentials are on the same line as your name, the algorithm will think your credentials are part of your name, and then you won't get credit for your credentials. So put your credentials on a separate line. Do not put them on the same line as your name. Second, do not put your full address. It's a waste of space. Just put the city and the state or the province. The next thing, do not use shading, as in no pale gray or pale blue blocks. Stick to an all white background, and in many cases, all black fonts. Next, no underlines. Yes, you can have hyperlinks, but otherwise do not underline anything. Next, no fancy bullets. You have an option of using dashes or small squares or small circles as bullets. But if you use a fancy bullet, there's a chance the ATS will think that it's an image and it'll print the bullet out as a whole page. disaster. Next, similar to the bullets, no images, icons, or emojis. Every one of these graphics, again, creates an extra page in the ATS. There you go. That's a preliminary list, the secondary learning that I want to reinforce with you, this list of do nots. Now, the third and last learning. It's actually a gift from Martin and me. It's a document that very clearly outlines exactly how your resume should look, as he says, above the fold. It's the top third of the first page, from your name and designation to the various summaries and down to the list of your specific skills. We've made it very easy for you to find this document and to download it. You can find the link in the show notes, however you're listening to this podcast, or you can go to talkabouttalk.com/ATS. That's talkabouttalk.com/ATS. And that is everything for this episode. I don't know about you, but I personally learned a lot. Thanks again to Martin Buckland. You can find all of Martin's coordinates in the show notes for this episode. And my coordinates are there too. You'll find a link there to sign up for my free email newsletter. That's like getting free coaching from me every 2 weeks. There's also a link to my LinkedIn account, so you can follow me there and maybe even send me a DM, a direct message. If you enjoyed this Talk About Talk podcast, please make sure you subscribe. And don't forget, you can also watch Talk About Talk on our YouTube channel. Yes, you can watch the Talk About Talk podcast. Whether you're watching or whether you're listening, I want to conclude by saying thank you for being here. Talk soon.